Companion is a new film from writer and director Drew Hancock. This is more of like a horror thriller film that stars Sophie, Thatcher, and Jack Quaid. And before we go any further, before I get to the plot synopsis, when I do that, I am gonna tell the first act twist, only because I thought about trying to avoid it, trying to go by the teaser trailer logic of don't say anything, but there's points in the marketing where they've already revealed it. The second trailer, which started playing in theaters, revealed it. It's on the poster. It's hard to avoid, and there are certain things I would like to talk about that deal with that. So just a heads up, I will be describing that, and I will not be spoiling anything else about the film, but if you want to not be as spoiled as possible, you should maybe click off and go see the movie first before watching this. So anyways, this movie is about a group of friends that go to a lake house. Jack Quaid plays a man named Josh who brings his girlfriend Iris, who's, totally an outsider to, this close-knit friend group. But then the death of one of their billionaire friends starts to stir up some stuff. And of course the fact that, and this is your last chance to click off the video, Iris is a companion robot for Josh, hence the title of the film. I got excited for this movie based off of the teaser trailer. I knew nothing about the movie. I knew nothing about who was writing and directing other than the tagline that said, "From the unhinged creators of Barbarian," which is a movie I really loved. Upon further investigation, obviously Zach Cregger, although initially was being talked into directing, he is only a producer on the film. He did not write it. He did not direct it. That would be Drew Hancock, of course. But I was still completely sold on the teaser trailer alone. I thought that's a really great way to market your movie. I have no idea what's going on other than there's something off. Of course, the follow-up trailer then gives away, the first act twist, hence why I have to tell you here, because it's kind of hard to, talk about a movie and use marketing material that, is basically telling the audience as well what the first act twist is at this point. But still, nonetheless, I was like, this is a pretty cool idea. If anything, I now want to see how this all plays out. And Drew Hancock, this is his feature directorial debut, but he's been active as far as he's written for Purgatory, he's written for Mr. Pickles, the Adult Swim animated show, he's written for a couple other things, but the thing that people will hyperfixate on is that he's written 2 episodes of Fred the TV show and is the sole writer for Fred 3 Camp Fred. I think this just goes to show you that, sometimes, before you can make your big debut, your passion project, you have to be a working writer, you have to, do some things that you might not, be too attached to or have too much of a passion for, but it's a job, it's how you get your name out there, get by, move up in the world, and then you do it. And I'm glad that Drew Hancock has gotten to a point where he can be making his feature directorial debut, because I thought Companion was a solid thriller. For a feature debut, I thought he directed this movie with an assured confidence. There's plenty of scenes where, she's on the run, she's got access to certain things about her now that she didn't before, she's learning more about who she truly is and how they implement that into the suspense of it all, the chase sequences. I thought it was pretty clever for a lot of it, and I thought it was directed really well. This movie is not really a horror movie, like I said, it's kind of more a thriller, and those sequences play really well, a lot of great suspense where you are kind of wondering what direction are they going to go with this movie, that they're kind of playing the unpredictability factor here. So I really don't know what they're going to do here, what direction this narrative is going to go, what's going to fit best for the theme. So it's more of a thriller as opposed to like a scary film, and they also balance that out with a lot of comedy. This movie is very funny. I laugh so hard at an abrupt cut from a lively, friendly, dance with everybody in the living room, and then they just hard cut to Jack Quaid's orgasming face close up in the camera, and I was dying at that. I love that so much. There's a lot of great comedic gags. Harvey Guillen is in the film, and he plays a good, comedic supporting role. He and Lucas Gage have really, very tender, sweet, and a little bit of, playful comedic chemistry with each other, and that I thought worked really well. I thought their presence was really welcome. And Rupert Friend is just, he's hamming it up big time. This, Russian kind of sounding guy who, has money in a mysterious way. Every time he was on screen for the brief amount he was in this, I just thought he was just having a great time, and I love seeing that. If I can circle back to Lucas Gage, though, real quick, he's one of those guys who, has been popping up in certain things, and I, make note of it, oh yeah, it's that guy, he's Euphoria, The White Lotus, he was in Smile 2 recently, and in this one, I think this might be the one I'm the most impressed with him, so far, as far as, seeing him level up and, progress as an actor, being in all these things. I thought he did really well here. We talked about how, you know, he has a good, like, kind of sweet chemistry with Harvey Guillen, but then you kind of see his character, you know, harden as it goes on, certain events that happen where you're like, oh, poor guy, you know what I mean? And seeing that character develop was actually, you know, pretty interesting. And I wasn't really suspecting that, you know what I mean? It's part of the reason why, you know, the first act reveal being spoiled in the second trailer, okay, whatever, like, it's annoying, but there is still things to uncover as far as, like, what's going to make this movie interesting that I thought they did really well. Jack Quaid is one of those actors lately who I love hearing good news about him. He just seems like a really nice guy. I know, you know, celebrity worship, hero worship, whatever, you know, don't trust any of these people, right? I want to trust Jack Quaid with all my heart, though. He just seems like a very sweet, nice guy. You know, he's always turning in a good performance in something, whether it's The Boys or it's Scream 5. I'm looking forward to Novocaine. But in this one as well, you know, he does a really good job of just totally embodying this guy who has good looks. You know, he seems really funny and charming, despite maybe being, like, a bit dorky. But underneath all that, like, if you spend more time with this character, and the way they kind of structure it in the first act is that they kind of slowly, you know, have this character start to say things that are kind of like, oh, okay, and then it kind of builds, you know, as far as, like, these little actions he does, where you're like, oh, he has the looks and he has enough charm to get by, but he fucking sucks. You know, he's one of those losers who, like, you know, who you see a lot of nowadays. I feel like some people still out there are like, you know, I could never have suspected this person to be a total fuck up because he just seems so well-to-do, so charming, you know, so handsome, right? But it turns out, you know, if you've been paying attention, a lot of losers come in many shapes, sizes, looks, whatever, and Jack Quaid totally embodies that in this movie, and I thought he did a really great job. Obviously, the star of the show here is Sophie Thatcher, who has been impressing a lot. I haven't seen Yellow Jackets. I'm only familiar with her film work, which would be Boogeyman, which she was good in, and recently Heretic. You know, she was a really, you know, of the, you know, kind of three main cast members in that movie, she obviously held her own and was offering a really great performance. It's very easy to be overlooked by Hugh Grant, you know, so high props to both of them, but Sophie Thatcher in this instance a lot for being able to stand on her own and be memorable, be remembered. Like, I know who she is and I'm going to look out for her. And she's really great in this movie. Obviously, we've talked about what the first act twist is, but then comes, okay, you have to do the actual work to make that character and that performance convincing. You know, this character, the way they've written it, is discovering this and is shocked by it, but is, like, kind of intrigued to learn more about what she can do, like, once she accesses certain settings on her own. And that was just a real great thrill to see. You know, I thought she really carried this character super, super well, and it just makes the narrative overall so much more compelling, you know, because they are dealing with a bit more of, like, kind of like a Twilight Zone-esque kind of, like, question of, like, what if robots could, you know, feel like what certain things are programming versus, like, actual emotion, especially in this instance, since they're designed to be, you know, companion bots, you know what I mean, for, you know, relationships or sexual pleasure, right? So, like, at what point is it programming? At what point can they actually start to feel, you know, something that is also pretty relevant with the fucking incessant need to keep developing AI. Why the fuck are we doing that? It's a different thing. We don't need to talk about that now. But I found that interesting to explore here, and it works super well with the narrative they set up with this really bad relationship that seemed to start off promising, but turns out it was kind of rotten from the start. But there is still a way out of that if you take the necessary steps, and I thought that was really cool. So it has a good narrative, has some really great cast members, you know, acting really well, some great comedic dialogue, just some really great thrilling sequences, and great technical display in a lot of ways. You know, cinematography, it's shot really well. The musical score, I thought, accompanied it very well. It's just a really well-made feature debut from Drew Hancock. I look forward to seeing more from him, whatever else ideas he has, you know, I look forward to it. I do have a couple issues with this movie, though. For one, I do think we could have used maybe a little bit more time with some of the other characters at the start. Did they give you enough, you know, to get the gist of it before they move on? But there are still, for me at least, certain details where I'm like, I kind of am a little bit more unclear about this, and I feel like I need a bit more to complete the whole picture here. Like I said, it is enough just to, like, kind of let it move on, but after the fact, there was a part of me that was like, what? I want to see a bit more, you know what I mean? Just, I would like to be fully immersed with the characters' lives a bit more, which I usually kind of go back to this. It's usually like a testament to how well you're doing a movie if I'm like, I just want to see a bit more, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with saying I want more, I think. Because for the most part, I will say, it means you are liking everything else as well. So more time, at least for me, I think would have been helpful near the start of the film, just still in the first act. There's a way that they introduce this movie, you know, the opening scene itself is fine. It's the, like, narration dialogue that they have Iris say that I was like, oh, it's that line from the trailer that also gives away something that's eventually going to happen, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. And then at the end of the film, they kind of have it said again, and it's like, yeah, I'm aware, you know what I mean? I found that a little clunky. There's another part of dialogue where Iris is like trying to plot out what she's going to do, and I understand the position that Drew Hancock is in as far as like the character is on her own and we need to convey to the audience somehow that she's trying to think of a way to escape. I understand the position that he was in as far as like, you know, someone who's also like written in his own time. Yeah, you know, finding out certain ways to give information to the audience, that's difficult, right? But there is a point where, you know, she's on her own trying to plot out what she's going to do, and she's on this cliffside, and the dialogue is literally like, okay, Iris, gotta use this 60% more intelligence to your advantage. What are you gonna do to get away from these crazy fucks? You know, like, just very obvious, spelling everything out. She'll have like a little, like a fantasy as far as like how a plan is going to go, and she's like, well, nope, I cannot do that. That's not going to end well. What if I do that? And it's like, you don't, like, there's a way you can touch that up, I think, and not have it be so on the nose and obvious. And speaking of that intelligence, the last thing that I will say as far as like any negatives is that there is like a point where I'm like, is she really 100% intelligent? Like, you see her go from like 40% to 100%. It's even in the second trailer, so that's not a spoiler. And she does try to come up with a lot of clever things to get out. Like, she's always thinking she's very smart, but there is a part of me that is like, okay, like my idea of like 100% versus like going from 40% to 100% is clearly way different than like what the creative teams is here, because it doesn't really feel like that. Like, there's still instances where, you know, it seems like someone who is using 100% brain capacity would have thought of something that goes wrong that she then gets frustrated by. So there's still a lot of clever ideas, and it's really like maybe two things that I'm like really thinking of as far as like how a certain thing plays out. But it just got me wondering, like, I think maybe there's, you know, similar to the dialogue with her on the cliffside, like maybe there's a way to touch that up. But overall though, despite my issues with this movie, I had a really fun time with this. I think it's a really, you know, fun, clever little thriller. It could have, you know, used some tightening up with the script writing in certain areas. But overall, I would highly recommend. I think there's a lot of great performances here, and a narrative that, even though it has told certain things in the marketing, still goes in some pretty surprising directions. Obviously though, the less you know about it, the better. So hopefully you did that before you watched through this entire review. I'm gonna give Companion a B. I really did enjoy this. Please check it out if you can. I'm glad that the budget is so low and that it had a pretty solid opening weekend, but I would like to see that just continue to climb. You know, I would like to see this have a similar success that Barbarian did, which is, by the way, a fantastic movie. Put that on physical media, someone, god damn it. It's so good, and I love that so much. I know I didn't review it at the time. I was in that weird little 2-year slump. But I really enjoyed that as well. This movie is not, even though they try to use that in the trailer, like from the unhinged creators of Barbarian, it's not as good as Barbarian in my opinion. But this movie does attempt to do like another surprising kind of like thrill ride for an audience, and I find that highly commendable, and it's really good. But if you've seen Companion already, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.